There are many things that can sway someone's opinion on a game. A deal breaker for one person might be what makes the game playable for another. For me, whether or not I enjoy a game really boils down to 5 main sections: story, characters, music, exploration, and combat. Not necessarily in that order. Now, without further ado, let's get into my thoughts on Chain of Memories. Kingdom Hearts is one of those series that, while I know which game I tell people is my favorite, usually my actual favorite is whichever one I played most recently or am currently playing. Upon getting into Chain of Memories the first time, I heard pretty mixed opinions on it due to the combat system, but I actually enjoyed Chain of Memories more than Kingdom Hearts 1 during my original playthrough of the series, and I found it even more enjoyable the second time around. Our story picks up right where Kingdom Hearts 1 left off, with Sora, Donald, and Goofy being led to a place called Castle Oblivion in order to find Riku and King Mickey. Our mission is very quickly derailed after meeting some weirdos in black cloaks, our first introduction to Organization 13, who tell us that Castle Oblivion, true to its name, will slowly erase our memories the higher in the castle we go. Despite the warning, we still really need to find our friends because we promised we would, so we continue our journey upwards, losing memories all the way. About halfway through the castle, Sora begins to vaguely remember a girl he and Riku used to play with on the Destiny Islands when they were children, a girl named Namine. Sora, being the loyal and compassionate friend he is, feels terrible that he forgot about Namine in the first place, and the promise they made that he would always protect her and never make her cry. Very quickly, finding Riku gets put on the back burner while Sora's sole focus shifts to finding and saving Namine. In addition to Chain of Memories being the game that introduces nobodies and the organization, it is also the game that introduces the concept of replicas and fabricated hearts. This takes place in the form of a replica prototype made by Vexen, who is essentially the Hojo of Kingdom Hearts. While Sora becomes obsessed with saving Namine, he is also determined to save Riku, or in this case, the Riku replica, who we have lovingly dubbed Repliku for the rest of this video. We learn through our fights with Repliku that he also shares some of the false memories that Sora has been gaining as we ascend through Castle Oblivion. After our final fight with Repliku, Larxene takes pity on us and tells us what's really going on. Essentially, it's not the castle that's making Sora forget, but rather Namine herself. Namine has a special link with Sora and Kairi due to the nature of her coming into existence, essentially being the nobody born of Kairi's heart and Sora's body when Sora became a Heartless in Kingdom Hearts 1. Namine was born with the ability to manipulate the memories of Sora and those close to him. She cannot create new memories or erase previously existing ones, but she can rearrange the links of his memories to overwrite the details or to make him forget them. Namine was forced to mess with Sora at the order of Marluxia and Larxene, who plan to turn Sora into their puppet in order to overthrow the organization. Despite finding out that his memories are false and that Repliku isn't his Riku, Sora still promises to keep Namine safe, and he ends up defeating Marluxia at the top of Castle Oblivion. There, he is faced with the choice of either keeping his memories of Namine and his time at Castle Oblivion, or forgetting those memories and regaining his old ones. He chooses to have Namine put his memory back together, so Sora goes to sleep so Namine can begin her work. But not before promising that even if the memories of her are forgotten, they are not lost and that they will reunite in the future. Chain of Memories also comes with an alternate route called Reverse Rebirth that follows Riku. Following the events of Kingdom Hearts 1, Riku awakens with his heart in the Realm of Darkness. Through Riku's connection with Sora, he ends up back in the Realm of Light in the deepest basement of Castle Oblivion. He is led through the 14 floors by a mysterious person named Diz and Organization 13. Riku's route revolves around him facing and accepting the darkness within him, and learning to utilize it as his own instead of fearing it. Once he gets out of the basement of Castle Oblivion, Riku meets Namine and finds a sleeping Sora. Like Sora, Riku is given the option to be put to sleep, so that Namine can lock the darkness in Riku's heart, along with the echo of Ansem, Seeker of Darkness, in exchange for Riku's memories. Riku decides against going to sleep, instead opting to protect Sora while he sleeps. He and Mickey leave Castle Oblivion, vowing to walk the path of both light and darkness. Personally speaking, Sora in Chain of Memories is probably one of my favorite renditions of the character. As we progress through Castle Oblivion, we see Sora's happy-go-lucky attitude that he is so well known for diminish more and more. As he begins to remember Namine, this person who he remembers to be so important to him as a child, he begins to feel more and more frustrated. Sora's guiding principle is his devotion to his friends and his willingness to do whatever it takes to keep them safe. So when he thinks that he has broken this core principle by forgetting all about Namine and his promise, he gets frustrated. That frustration builds up the longer it takes him to actually find Namine, eventually boiling over to the point where Sora runs off on his own in a fit of rage, determined to find her with or without Goofy and Donald's help. This might sound a little messed up, but I love seeing happy, hard-to-shake characters finally hit that breaking point. It shows a lot about the character just through seeing what was able to get that reaction out of them and how they behave once they have hit that point. I love that despite his anger and frustration, Sora, Donald, and Goofy's loyalty and friendship towards one another shines through, and they're able to save Namine together. Furthermore, I like the emphasis on Sora's willingness to empathize and forgive. Despite admitting that he is angry about Namine's meddling in his memory, he still understands her loneliness and why she did what she did, even going as far as to promise his friendship when he wakes up, even though he won't remember her anymore. I find Riku's role in this game to be very interesting. The end of Kingdom Hearts 1 marked the start of Riku's redemption arc, with him and Mickey helping Sora to close the door to darkness. Despite this being the conclusion to his arc in Kingdom Hearts 1, we see Riku struggles a lot with forgiving himself. When traversing through the memories of Riku's heart as we work through Castle Oblivion, every single world is empty except for creatures and people of darkness. Even on the Destiny Islands, Selphie, Tidus, Waka, and Kairi all fade away, leaving the world empty. Riku's isolation is a product of him feeling unworthy of the company of his friends after what he did. That, compounded with his fear of Ansem and the darkness within him, show us a Riku who is less cocky and more unsure than any iteration of Riku we've seen thus far. Seeing this more humble Riku work through his fears with the help of Mickey and despite the organization and Repliku makes a really compelling story and had me cheering for Riku despite the fact that I initially hated him. I've never actually played 358 over 2 days on the DS. I've only ever watched the cutscenes on the 1.5 final remix, but I finally got my hands on a copy and I am very excited to see Riku more in depth following his road to dawn and the forgiveness he seeks. And now I am going to interject my quick little note. When Namine was messing with Sora's memories, she states that she cannot create new memories, only modify the ones that already exist. Sora has a memory of promising Namine that he will protect her during the night of the meteor shower, the memory ending with Namine giving Sora her good luck charm. When confronting Repliku, we learn that Repliku has the same memory, with Repliku's memory being that of Riku's and Namine being unable to create new memories, and with Kairi having not been on the islands at all yet because she arrived during the meteor shower the memory is depicted in, we can conclude that the true memory was between Sora and Riku, most likely with Riku promising to protect Sora. There's also a theory floating around that Riku gave Sora his necklace during this event as well, but that's just speculation. I wanted to bring this up because while Kingdom Hearts 1 showed how important Sora was to Riku and vice versa, I feel as though Calm is really when it starts to be a lot more in your face. And yes, I am a Soriku shipper. If you're not a Soriku shipper, you gotta at least admit that them boys are very important to one another. Kairi isn't as prevalent in this game as she is in Kingdom Hearts 1. Get used to hearing that sentence a lot as we continue to make our way through the series. Kairi is used more as a reference point rather than an actual character in this game. As I mentioned in my previous video, I believe Kairi represents Sora's link to the past and to his home. I think this is further proven in Chain of Memories, with Kairi essentially being the one that is able to illuminate Sora's lost memories, as said by Namine. I think this notion is rather bittersweet because on one hand, while the game does effectively show Kairi's importance as that link for Sora, it also shows how the more Sora grows up and moves away from the idea of going home, the further the two seem to drift apart. I found it interesting that Kairi was more relevant in Riku's route than she was in Sora's, with Namine saving Riku from the darkness disguised as Kairi. I find this interesting because despite the obvious reason of Namine disguising herself as someone Riku trusts, I think this also plays into Kairi's role of representing the islands and the past, to not just Sora, but Riku as well. Despite Kairi definitely being important to Riku in a very different way than Sora is, she is still someone that Riku trusts and wants to return to. Namine was one of my favorite characters in Kingdom Hearts when I was a kid. Instead of actually playing the games when I was younger, I like to just replay the prologue of Kingdom Hearts 2 over and over again, much to the annoyance of everyone living in my house. Because of that, Namine, Axel, and Roxas were some of my favorite characters, but I didn't actually know too much about them because the prologue of Kingdom Hearts 2 is kind of meant to keep you in the dark. Playing Chain of Memories for the first time and understanding why Namine was doing what she was doing in the prologue retroactively was really cool, but it also made me appreciate her as a character so much more. I think in the midst of all of the stuff happening in Chain of Memories with the organization and Repliku, as well as the mystery surrounding Castle Oblivion, it's really easy to forget just how much of a victim Namine is. We see Marluxia and Larxene physically, mentally, and emotionally abuse her all for the sake of getting to their goal. Meanwhile, all Namine really wants is to have a friend so she isn't lonely anymore. I think Namine's selflessness is what makes her such a compelling character. Despite the threat it presents to herself, she sticks up for Sora and Repliku, albeit a little late, but better late than never. Furthermore, she works tirelessly at the end of Chain of Memories to undo her mistake and put Sora's memory back together again. I really hope Namine is more relevant in upcoming titles. Repliku is what I like to call the king of all side characters in the Kingdom Hearts series. He acts as a means to challenge both Sora and Riku, but also present the player with the question of whether or not a replica of someone is able to develop their own sense of self and identity, or whether or not their heart would be considered real. Repliku is a very tragic character, both internally dealing with the turmoil of being fake in his mind, and externally with the manipulation the organization put him through. Even through his death, he made us think about what happens to artificial beings after they die, and I think he introduces a lot of important ideas and themes that become relevant later on in the series. Repliku walked so that Roxas and Xion could run. And finally, that brings me to Organization 13. Guys, Recom was such a cool introduction to the organization. All of them are so ruthless in this game that it really drives home how formidable the Superior must be for being able to keep these people in line. As someone who played Union Key all the way through and knows what's up, I also really loved meeting Marluxia and Larxene and seeing their shenanigans together. I think nobodies are probably my favorite group of beings in Kingdom Hearts just because of the constant dilemma they face of whether or not they can consider themselves real people due to their lack of hearts. And I think Chain of Memories did an amazing job of setting that up while still leaving us with so many questions as to what the true goals of the organization really are. And now we get to talk about one of my favorite things in the game, the card system. Guys, action games are not my forte. I enjoy them quite a bit, but it definitely takes me a little longer to learn the controls and get that muscle memory in. So even though Chain of Memories is still an action game, introducing the extra layer of the card system, which is more up my alley, makes it one of my favorite battle systems in the series. On Sora's side, you get to actually build your deck, and I had so much fun optimizing them for each boss fight. And that's another thing. Chain of Memories has my favorite bosses in the series. Every single one is challenging, but still very fun, and just like all the organization fights just keep building on each other and just getting better as you go up higher in Castle Oblivion. On Riku's side, while you don't get to build your deck, there's the introduction of Darkness Form and also the duel system. And while I do find the duel system to be fun, I took advantage of it a lot for the more difficult bosses like Repliku and Ansem Sod. The card system is also implemented into the exploration of the game, with different cards being how you open each world and subsequent rooms in that world. There's essentially 3 sections of cards. Red cards affecting the number and attitudes of Heartless in the room, blue cards that were typically support rooms like treasure, save points, and Moogle shops, and green cards that affect things like how effective your items or magic cards are. Each of these cards could be numbered from 0 to 9, and each room had specific requirements for opening it. Unlike the combat system, I'm pretty lukewarm on the cards as a means of exploration, mostly because there were several times in the game where I didn't have the one card I needed, and I have to spend a bunch of time grinding just to hopefully get the right card, and it was so annoying. In terms of the music, Chain of Memories reuses a lot of the tracks in Kingdom Hearts 1. However, the new songs that are in the game are all top tier. The 13th Struggle and Lord of the Castle are two of my most favorite boss themes in the series, and I adore Namine's theme and kind of like the callback to the Crystal Prelude of Final Fantasy. The harp sounds very similar. There are also some pieces that get different arrangements, such as Lazy Afternoons and the Destiny Islands theme. The Destiny Islands theme is slowed down significantly, and it uses the piano as the main instrument, unlike in Kingdom Hearts 1. And I love this version in Chain of Memories because it makes it feel very nostalgic and kind of melancholy, which makes sense considering both Riku and Sora are recalling memories of a home they haven't returned to in a while. Lazy Afternoons utilizes the harmonica over the flute, and I love harmonicas in music because they always sound kind of lonely to me. This is purely my opinion, but I think the reason the harmonica and those feelings of loneliness resonate so much with me is because Sora himself feels like he's been to Twilight Town, but he can't remember ever actually being there, which leads him to feel confused with this vague sense of familiarity, and the harmonica just is the perfect instrument for that. I don't know, it's just so based. Random thoughts I had while playing the game. Riku's finger waggle level up pose is one of my favorites. It looks so stupid and silly. I played Chain of Memories in this video on Proud Mode, and I distinctly remember Repliku 3 being the hardest boss in the game when I played it on Standard, so I was a little salty when I got stuck on Repliku 4 for a couple hours longer than Repliku 3. I really like how short Kingdom Hearts games are. I know a lot of people prefer longer games, but I like that I can play the non-numbered games in a single sitting if I really wanted to. When I first played Chain of Memories, it was right after playing Kingdom Hearts 1, and as many of you may know, the original Chain of Memories was on the Game Boy Advance and was not voiced. So, Sora's voice actor, Haley Joel Osment, was quite a bit older when 1.5 came out, and so Sora had his Kingdom Hearts 2 voice in Chain of Memories, which was really weird with his Kingdom Hearts 1 body. Anyways, this is a really long setup for me to say that when I first played Chain of Memories, I asked my sister, I was like, why does he sound like that? Oh my god. And my sister looked me dead in the eye and just kind of shrugged and was like, his voice dropped first. And now the voice change just like makes sense to me because every time I see it, I'm just like, yeah, Sora's going through puberty and his voice dropped before he hit his growth spurt. That makes sense. In conclusion, Chain of Memories is definitely a unique entry to the Kingdom Hearts series, with its different battle system. All in all, I think it hosts a solid story, phenomenal characters, and serves as an excellent sequel to the first game. So even though fighting Repliku 6 times can get tedious, it's worth it. Thank you so much for watching, and I will catch you on the next one.